That Christmas night, surrounded by twinkling lights, forced laughter, and the smell of roasting turkey, something inside me broke for good. My name is Elisa. I'm 33 years old, and for almost my entire life, I've tried to be invisible so as not to bother anyone, until, at that dinner, someone decided to see me, in the worst possible way. It wasn't the first comment, nor the first veiled humiliation, but it was the last time I lowered my head and pretended it didn't hurt. The room was crowded. My nieces were running around the furniture in their shiny dresses. My mother was smiling as if she didn't know the burdens we were carrying, and my father, always so economical with gestures of affection, kept his eyes on the television, as if the news were more important than the children around the table. But he was there. Eduardo, my brother-in-law, my younger sister Clara's husband, the kind of man who always seems to stand out. He talks loudly, laughs even louder, loves attention, and knows exactly how to diminish it with a single sentence. He has this talent of turning a seemingly peaceful evening into a silent war, and at that dinner, he decided to stick his spear in. It all started when Clara proudly announced that they had just closed a $1 million contract with an international technology company. The whole table cheered, of course. My father raised his glass, tapping it with his spoon to toast. Mom was in tears. Even the children stopped to listen. It was then that Eduardo, already with 2 glasses of wine in his head, turned his gaze to me, and with a crooked smile and a voice full of venom disguised as a joke, he said, "And you, Elisa? Are you still trying to figure out what you want from life? Or have you really decided to become this friendly failure that brightens up our parties?" Silence. The entire table fell silent. For 2 seconds that seemed like an eternity. No one breathed. All eyes were on me. My sister smiled awkwardly, trying to patch it up with an, "Oh, Eduardo, stop that." But it was too late. He knew what he was doing, and so did I. I felt the blood heat in my face. I felt my father's gaze boring into me with silent judgment. I felt my mother force a smile. I felt shame, but most of all, I felt hatred. Because he wasn't lying. He was saying what everyone there had always thought but never had the courage to throw in my face. Yes, I was unemployed. Yes, I had tried to start my own business and it hadn't worked out. Yes, I was still living in a small rented studio apartment. But that didn't make me any less valuable. Or did it? I wanted to stand up and scream. I wanted to say it wasn't fair. That I had done what I could with the cards I had been dealt. But my throat got stuck. I just smiled and joked, "Someone has to serve as a contrast, right?" Some laughed. Others looked away. And Eduardo? He took a sip of wine, satisfied. He thought he had won. Little did he know that, at that moment, I was already deciding what I would do. That the main course of my revenge would be served calmly, with planning, and yes, with dessert. You might think it was just a bad joke. You might think I'm exaggerating. But I assure you, when you spend your life trying to prove your worth to a family that has always seen you as dead weight, and someone decides to label you that way, in front of everyone, something inside you breaks. And sometimes, that's exactly what we need to stop being weak. At that Christmas dinner, I died inside. But it was also there that I began to be reborn. After that night, I couldn't sleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling, reliving every second, every glance he looked away from, every chuckle he held back. And his voice, "Nice failure," echoed in my head like a slap that never stopped stinging. The worst part wasn't what he said. It was what no one did. My mother, always so helpful, pretended not to hear. My father continued chewing, as if it had nothing to do with him. Clara, my sister, the one who grew up sharing my bed, secrets, tears, just laughed, uncomfortably, and went back to serving salad as if it were just another joke. Not a look of apology, not an attempt at redemption. Nothing. On that cold morning, I realized that what hurt wasn't Eduardo's venom. It was the complicit silence of everyone else. I spent weeks trying to swallow it. I smiled on the outside, but inside everything inside me was burning. A fire that I didn't know if it was sadness, anger, or shame. Maybe it was all of them together. I distanced myself from messages, declined invitations to coffee with my mother, and even ignored Clara's calls. I needed to breathe. I needed to stop screaming. But the universe, ironic as only it knows how to be, decided to test me again. It was a Saturday afternoon. I was coming back from the supermarket with 2 heavy bags when I saw Eduardo's car parked in front of my building. At first, I thought it was a coincidence, but he got out of the car with that same arrogant air as always and smiled when he saw me. "Hey, you loser. Do you live here? I thought you had gone back to your parents' house." My body froze. I wanted to disappear. He knew exactly what he was doing there. "I came to pick up a delivery for the office." He pointed to a delivery backpack on the passenger seat. Yes, besides being a businessman, Eduardo had a small gourmet delivery service, and apparently he used informal delivery services. However, on that occasion, the delivery man had left the package with me because he lived upstairs and knew I would be home. A silly favor, which turned into yet another opportunity for him to humiliate me. "You should try some odd jobs like that, Elisa. Who knows, you might discover your talent. Carrying bags, right?" I held back the tears, not out of weakness, but because I knew that if I cried there, he would win again. I handed him the backpack without saying a word, and when he turned his back, with that self-assured walk, an idea went through me like a lightning bolt. No, this couldn't go on. I wasn't going to spend my life swallowing insults, lowering my head and being a target for an insecure man disguised as successful. He arrives. It was time to stop being the forgotten sister, the forgotten daughter, the joke of the family. It was time to start making my way back, but this time, from above. And like every good redemption story, mine would also begin with a secret. Because what Eduardo didn't know, and what no one at that dinner had any idea, is that I already had an ace up my sleeve. A piece of information that, if used intelligently, could turn his life upside down. Something he himself let slip years before at a random lunch, when he was talking more than he should have. At the time, it seemed irrelevant. But now, it was pure gold. The fire inside me became strategy. The pain became fuel. The wound turned into an open scar, ready to be covered by a smile of revenge. And that was exactly where my plan began to take shape. The next few weeks were long, silent, cruel. On the surface, everything was the same. I still lived in the same tiny apartment. I still made coffee in the old kettle I had inherited from my grandmother. I still checked my work emails that I had ignored. But inside, I was a wreck. That phrase, friendly failure, stuck to me like a second skin. At the grocery store, when I saw acquaintances from afar, I swore they were talking about me. On social media, every achievement of others seemed like another reminder of my stagnation. Even alone, I felt like I was being watched by an invisible audience, always ready to laugh. One day, I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman there. Hair tied in a messy bun, dark circles under her eyes, slumped shoulders, skin too pale for someone who once dreamed of shining. It was as if I was occupying a role that didn't belong to me, a secondary character in my own story. I tried to find strength in the person I thought loved me. I called Clara. She answered smiling as if everything was fine. "Hi, little sister. It's good to hear from you. I thought you had disappeared." "I disappeared, Clara, because I felt bad. Because your husband humiliated me in front of our entire family, and you did nothing." Silence. "Elisa, you know how Eduardo is. He speaks without thinking. He's just like that. He doesn't take anything seriously. You can't let this affect you so much." "I can't let this get to me? He called me a failure in front of everyone, and you tell me to not take it seriously? Girlfriend, if you had a little more confidence in yourself, maybe you wouldn't feel so affected. I love you, but you need to learn to protect yourself." Shield. That was the word that sealed it all. She spoke of me as if I were a cracked glass about to shatter, as if I were too fragile to be in the world. And worse, she didn't see her own cowardice. I hung up without saying anything else. Because at that moment, I understood that the betrayal wasn't just Eduardo's, it was hers too. And perhaps the entire family. I didn't go out for days. Not because I was lazy, but because I was embarrassed. That feeling of inadequacy was paralyzing. When you feel like the whole world looks at you with pity, they're always waiting for you to confirm the label. I no longer received invitations. Not even to Sunday lunches. Not even to my niece's birthdays. It was as if the humiliation had erased me completely. And all that was left was silence. The same silence that had swallowed up my existence since forever. But it was in this solitude that something began to germinate. Pain became discipline. Abandonment became focus. And anger, well, Anger became a meticulous plan, because I did remember what Eduardo told me years ago, a banal story, while laughing out loud at the family barbecue. The company's accountant pulls some strings so that we pay less tax. Everyone does it. You just have to know where to cut. At the time, no one paid attention. But now, it was a weapon. And I was about to learn how to use every detail with surgical precision. I started writing down everything I could remember: dates, names. I started reading about tax fraud, studying basic accounting, and investigating companies that optimized their taxes. I created a fake profile on LinkedIn, joined groups of accountants and tax lawyers, and learned how to cross-reference public information with private transactions. I spent sleepless nights researching, and each discovery was like a new brick in the foundation of what I was building. But I knew, if I wanted his downfall to be complete, I would have to do everything right. No rush, no mistakes. I was going to turn that humiliation into a spectacle. But to do that, I needed to be patient. After all, the best dessert is served cold. They thought I was silent because I accepted. They thought I had gone back to the darkness of my small, dull world, where I bothered no one, where I could be easily forgotten. But they were wrong. I was silent, because I was too busy building an invisible empire. It wasn't an empire of bricks and mortar or bank accounts. It was made of information, details, connections, a web so discreet and well-woven that no one would suspect me, the nice loser. It was almost poetic. On days when loneliness threatened to engulf me, I would delve deeper into online forums and groups where accountants shared confidences. A pseudonym, a generic profile picture, and good writing skills opened doors for me. Within a few months, I was already learning how to identify tax evasion, contract fraud, and loopholes in fake CNPJs. And the most ironic thing? The more I studied to destroy it, the more I rebuilt myself. I began to see myself in a different light. The same woman who had spent years apologizing for existing now saw intelligence where before there had been only guilt. I began to take care of myself again. Hair, skin, body, not out of vanity, but because I looked in the mirror and saw a warrior disguised as a civilian. That's when I created a new email, neutral name, cloud address, all secured with two-factor authentication. And then I started the second phase, mapping. I wanted to understand how Eduardo kept the money circulating. After all, he wasn't just a successful businessman, as he proudly said on social media. He was also a partner in 3 companies in the name of third parties, all with similar names, opening and closing in a suspicious cycle. I pulled up the CNPJ of one of the companies he used for delivery. It was in the name of a guy named Fabricio, a former college classmate of his. I followed the name and found his CPF, and, with a quick search of public records, I confirmed. Fabricio had a bad credit history and no assets in his name. He was a frontman. The second company was in the name of Eduardo's own mother-in-law, a woman with advanced stage Alzheimer's. The third didn't even physically exist. It was a ghost company, registered with a post office box address in an abandoned building in the industrial zone. Every detail made me more certain that he was neck-deep in illicit dealings. But exposing him out of nowhere? That wouldn't be enough. I needed his downfall to be not only real, but public, slow, humiliating. He destroyed my image in front of everyone with one sentence. I wanted to destroy it with facts and have everyone watch without anyone being able to look away. That's when I decided to take part in a free consultancy offered by a tax reporting startup. They helped ordinary citizens organize evidence and send it anonymously to the IRS. I sent what I already had anonymously, and they gave me feedback. That's strong. But we need a more concrete link between his CPF and the crimes of the shell companies. Understood. I started working as a digital freelancer with fake profiles. I infiltrated forums for luxury service providers, where Eduardo often hired decorators and suppliers for the events he himself promoted. I managed to get a simple contract with his name as the financial manager, a missing piece. After that, I created a complete dossier: financial flows, date comparisons, prints, fake invoices, fake contracts, everything digital, everything organized, everything with a touch of irony. The failure, preparing the final report of a facade empire. When the startup analyst received the material, he responded with just one line: "This is going to stink. Get ready." And I smiled for the first time in months. Not that empty smile we give to hide our tears. It was a smile from someone who knows that justice is coming. And the best part, I hadn't even gotten to dessert yet. They were still laughing. Clara kept posting selfies at expensive dinners. Eduardo kept sharing motivational quotes on a black background with gold letters. Work in silence and let success make the noise. Oh, the irony. Little did they know that, as they smiled for the cameras, I had already begun pulling at the invisible threads that held up that castle of lies. The first step was the simplest, and perhaps the most enjoyable. I sent the complete dossier to the Federal Revenue Service, with all the connections, evidence, documents, and schemes mapped out. I used the secure system of the partner startup to maintain my anonymity. They assured me that given the volume of information, a formal investigation would be opened within 60 days. Meanwhile, I continued my silent choreography. I reactivated my social media with a new purpose, no longer as the inconspicuous woman who posted pictures of coffee with the caption "Monday again." Now, each post was strategic, discreet, but polite. A meeting here, a lecture there. I started attending entrepreneurship and innovation events, not because I wanted applause, but because I knew that they would see, and they saw. Clara liked a photo of me in a co-working space, with a different smile, one that said, "I know more than you think." Eduardo, silent, viewed my stories several times. It was just the beginning. My second move was bolder. I remembered that some time ago, Eduardo had gotten involved with a digital influencer to promote one of his gourmet businesses. I went after her. I created a fake profile, introduced myself as a reputation consultant, and offered free help to optimize her content. My ego got the better of me. She agreed. In a relaxed conversation, she said something that made me stop. Wow, Eduardo always told me that he hid a lot of things from his wife. He swore he had an account in the name of a partner, abroad, so as not to give away anything. All men are the same, right? Click. I was able to access old travel posts, comments in which he mentioned a Spanish partner. I arranged with the whistleblower startup to send the information to the Financial Intelligence Unit. In time, they would get there. But the third movement was what really opened the door to hell. He remembered that Eduardo's company had a compliance consultant on paper, a woman named Glaucia Ferreira. The name sounded familiar. I followed up. I discovered that Glaucia was Eduardo's cousin. She had a degree in biomedicine. She had never worked in finance, but her name appeared as the technical manager of one of the companies. I found her Facebook profile, where there was an old post mentioning that she was being pressured into signing documents she didn't understand. I printed it, I saved it, I added it to the dossier, and I did something unthinkable. I went to her house. "Glaucia, I'm Elisa, Clara's sister. We need to talk." She hesitated, but something in my eyes, or maybe in Eduardo's name, made her let me in. We talked for hours. Glaucia was scared. She said that Eduardo had promised to help her financially if she lent her name for a while, that he had said it was just bureaucracy. But now she was distressed. She was receiving notifications from the IRS. She was being called to testify. I showed her what I already knew. "You're not alone, Glaucia, and if you help me, you'll get out of this clean, and he won't." She agreed. He recorded a video. He explained everything, and he authorized its sending. On the same day, the IRS received new material. The plot was beginning to tighten around Eduardo's neck, and he still had no idea. But do you know who started to feel something strange in the air? Clara. "Hi, Elisa. Are you okay? You look different." She sent in audio. "I'm fine. Sometimes we need a push to wake up." Silence. Eduardo sent me a message, the first since the nice failure. "Hey, I see you're moving around. Let's talk?" I deleted it without replying. It was still early. I wasn't going to spoil the flavor of the dish, because everything I had done up until then was just the seasoning. Dessert was still being prepared, and it would be served in front of the whole family, at the same table where they called me nothing. The first crack appeared discreetly. It was a Wednesday morning. I was answering emails in a co-working space, something that made me feel alive, present, when my phone vibrated. It was a message from Clara, short, but with subtle desperation hidden between the lines. "Did you see that?" Below is a link to a local article. "Renowned businessman is investigated for tax fraud and use of shell companies." There were no names in the headline, but between the lines, it was all about him. The text mentioned a businessman in the gourmet sector with connections in multiple companies registered in third-party names. and stated that the Federal Revenue Service had received complaints with robust evidence. Awesome. It said that the investigation was ongoing and that more revelations would come to light. Smile. Not that smile of cheap satisfaction. It was a calm smile, like someone who sees the tide finally starting to change. Hours later, another notification, this time from Instagram. Eduardo had deactivated the profile, and then chaos began. That same week, one of the companies in the name of the mother-in-law, the woman with Alzheimer's, was notified by the court. A bailiff went to the woman's house. Clara told me in a panic that Eduardo had been missing for 2 days, trying to reverse the damage. But it was just the beginning. The following Saturday, while I was drinking coffee in silence, I received an unexpected audio. It was Eduardo's own. Elisa, I don't know what you're doing, but you're playing with fire. We can talk. Work this out. I didn't mean to hurt you that night. It was just a joke. You're taking it too far. Joke. He called all that joke. The man who had reduced me in front of my family was now begging for a truce, and yet he couldn't admit what he had done. I just replied, I'm just being who you always wanted me to be, someone with initiative. At this point, the startup's contacts informed me that the public prosecutor's office had requested cooperation in the case. What's more, the IRS had already opened a retroactive inspection process, asking for explanations of suspicious financial movements. Fabrizio, the #1 frontman, was summoned. Glaucia, now officially collaborating, handed over contracts and emails that Eduardo had sent in recent years. The house was falling down. And the best part? Nothing directly connected me to the complaint. In everyone's eyes, it was just fate, or perhaps karma, taking its toll. But I knew, and so did he. The following week, a family acquaintance, a prosecutor, called my father. Carlos, your son-in-law is in trouble. There are too many documents, too many names, and they're tracking everything. It's going to be in the press. My father, who had always avoided getting involved in my problems, now called me in a low, nervous voice. Daughter, are you aware of all this? I read the news, Dad. Sad, right? Do you think it has something to do with you? He said someone reported him. With me? Dad, do you think I would be capable of something so elaborate? Silence on the other side. It was there that I realized. Even he began to see me with different eyes. The invisible became an enigma. The erased daughter was now a threat. And that gave me more pleasure than any false praise. Clara, on the other hand, was immersed in denial. She posted self-help quotes on social media. She tried to maintain the perfect family glow. But the mask was already slipping. Gossip spread in city groups. Her friends stopped commenting on her photos. Eduardo's business, once popular among influencers, began to lose customers. Partnerships were broken. The local press began to probe deeper. And then came the invitation. The same group that had organized the Christmas dinner the previous year was now organizing a new gathering. This time, a more intimate end-of-year celebration. Only close family members were allowed to attend. Clara insisted that I go. It will be good to show that everything is fine between us. Of course I accepted. After all, what better place to serve revenge than at the same table where I was served humiliation? The invitation arrived on a Tuesday. A simple digital card on WhatsApp, with a red background, snow falling in a loop, and the phrase, Family Christmas, let's renew love and bonds. A little irony is nonsense. Clara insisted, Elisa, please. This year will be different. I promise. Little did she know how different he would be. I went. With a new dress, light makeup, elegantly tied hair, and a calm smile, she looked like a woman at peace. And in a way, I was. Because contrary to what everyone thought, I wasn't here to be the evening's decorative supporting actress. I was here as the show's director. The room looked similar to the year before, lights flashing, Pantone on the table, crystal glasses, forced laughter. But this time, I noticed the discomfort. Conversations stopped when I passed by. Eyes lingered a little longer. And Eduardo, well, he seemed thinner, with dark circles hidden under foundation, and a forced smile that trembled at the edges. I greeted everyone, even him. Good evening, Eduardo. You've been quieter this year. Good evening, Elisa. That's it. Eyes down. No irony. Dinner was served. Conversations were scattered. My father spoke little. My mother pretended that everything was normal. Clara smiled too much, which was always a sign of nervousness, till it was time for dessert. Clara brought a pecan pie to the table, my favorite. She said she had made it in my honor. After all, this year was so good for you, right, sis? You turned things around and everything? Everyone smiled, except Eduardo. And it was there, between bites and forced compliments, that I took a brown envelope out of my bag. I slowly placed it on the table, next to my plate. Since we're talking about new beginnings, I thought it would be nice to share something with you all. There was immediate silence. All eyes turned to me. This envelope contains copies of contracts, emails, printouts of bank transactions, and recordings that prove Eduardo's participation in tax fraud schemes, shell companies, and the use of front men. All of this was sent to the IRS and the public prosecutor's office months ago. Clara dropped her fork. My father's eyes widened. Eduardo tried to laugh. A dry, choked sound. You're kidding. No, Eduardo. It was you who played, with the law, with my dignity, and with the patience of everyone who has been humiliated in silence at this table. I opened the envelope. I handed out copies to trembling hands. Everyone read in silence. Clara was pale. My father, who had been so indifferent before, now looked like a judge without a robe, about to deliver a sentence. Eduardo stood up. You set me up. You spent all this time plotting my downfall. No, you dug it yourself. I just turned on the light. He tried to take the papers from his father's hand. My father stopped him. Did you use my family name to do dirty work, Eduardo? With Clara's mother's name? With her cousins? With the money from the company we helped to set up? Silence. A piercing silence. Humiliating. Public. The failed girl was now the woman who had turned the tables in front of everyone. Clara started to cry, not only from disappointment, but from shame. She looked at me with teary eyes and a low voice. Did you really do that? I did what I had to do. I got revenge for what they did to me. Not just at that dinner, but for all the years they made me feel inferior, stupid, useless. I got tired. And you know what the best part is? I did it alone. I got up from the table. The climate had changed, completely. The golden son-in-law was now a criminal about to be indicted. The clumsy sister was now the woman everyone looked at with respect, and perhaps even fear. Before leaving, I left one last sentence. This time, the dessert was mine. And I left. With your head held high, with a soul at peace. After that supper, there were no more toasts, no Merry Christmas or warm reunions the next day. The family's WhatsApp group went silent for weeks. No one knew what to say, and the people who should have been talking were busy, trying to survive the collapse. The first official news came 3 days later. Businessman in the gastronomic sector is formally indicted for tax fraud and use of third-party CPFs in fraudulent contracts. This time, the name was there. Eduardo Salas Diniz, in bold letters. Pictured in a suit, with a tense expression, flanked by federal agents as he left his house with his head down and a briefcase in his hand. The image circulated in groups around the city, in the neighborhood, behind the scenes of the business elite where he once reigned with smiles and ready-made phrases. My father, the man who spent his life trying to keep up appearances, canceled the New Year's Eve barbecue he threw every year. He claimed personal problems. My mother, who had always treated her family like porcelain to be polished and displayed, was now crying in her room, ashamed of having given her daughter to such a man. And Clara disappeared. She deactivated social media. She canceled her appointments. She sent her daughters to spend a few days with her maternal grandmother and locked herself in her house. She even called me once, but I didn't answer. At that point, she needed silence. The same silence they gave me when I was in pieces. But the one who suffered the most was him. Eduardo lost his most lucrative contracts in a matter of weeks. A supplier publicly posted that he did not collude with corrupt businessmen. An influencer canceled a partnership alleging breach of moral integrity. And when they tried to cover up the damage with a statement of clarification, the effect was even worse. Investigative journalists dug deeper and found more irregularities. Frozen accounts, breach of confidentiality, million-dollar fines, public hearings summoned, and, to top it all off, the IRS discovered that he transferred large amounts of money to accounts abroad in the name of a supposed Spanish investor. The name of the investor? A non-existent man. It was a fake profile created by Eduardo, and I knew it, because I was the one who created it. The courts understood it as an attempt to evade foreign exchange. The penalty would not be small. The latest move came from the public prosecutor's office itself, preventive detention while the process was ongoing. Risk of escape, they said. The news spread like wildfire. And what shocked me most was that no one, absolutely no one, tried to defend him. Not even Clara. She gave a statement. She confirmed some of the information. She said that she did not know the details and that she believed she was married to an honest man. The authorities treated her as an unwitting accomplice. I watched everything from afar, silently, serenely. He took no pleasure in their suffering, but he felt no pity either. It was balance. The weight they had placed on me for years was now on their shoulders. For the first time, they knew what it was like to be judged, ignored, pointed at. And Eduardo. He lost everything. Home, business, reputation, freedom. The man who mocked my stagnation now slept in a shared cell, with limited time for sunbathing. The winner, who had called me a nice failure, was now the face of public shame. And nobody, absolutely nobody, applauded him. But the story didn't end there. Weeks later, I received an unexpected message. It was Clara's. I know I have no right to ask for anything, but if you can ever forgive me, I will be here. I was blind. You didn't deserve anything you went through. I read the message a few times. I didn't answer. Not yet. Because sometimes silence is the fairest answer. Especially when it was silence that almost destroyed you. And it was also in it that you learned to be reborn. I still walk down the same street where, one day, I handed that backpack to Eduardo and heard the word failure as a sentence. But now, I walk with my head held high. No one looks away anymore to avoid the embarrassment of seeing me. No one asks with false politeness what I am doing with my life. And most importantly, I also no longer have to prove anything to anyone. I didn't build an empire. I didn't make millions. I didn't become a celebrity. But I have achieved something much rarer. Respect. Freedom. Peace. This whole story, from the dinner to the breakdown, taught me something that seems simple but is profound. No one has the right to define you. Not your family, not your partner, not the one who pretends to be by your side but hopes that you will always remain below. For years I accepted emotional crumbs. I kept quiet to preserve rotten bonds. I thought my worth came from the applause of others, until I realized that I lived in silence not by choice, but by fear. And when I finally spoke, I didn't shout. I just revealed the truth. A truth that, by the way, was always there. Everyone knew who Eduardo was, but they preferred to maintain the illusion, pretending that success and morality went hand in hand, pretending that character can be bought with expensive wine and articulate speeches. Today, he is at home, wearing an electronic ankle bracelet, awaiting trial. Clara has filed for divorce and is slowly trying to rebuild her life. She sends me messages from time to time. Sometimes I respond, sometimes I don't, not out of revenge, but because I'm too busy living for myself. I went back to school. I'm doing a postgraduate degree in management and compliance. I use my free time to provide free mentoring to women who want to start their own businesses but don't know where to start. And yes, I rented a new apartment, airy, with live plants and a mirror where, finally, I like what I see. I recently received an invitation to speak at an event on corporate ethics. When I entered the auditorium, one of the organizers took me aside and said, "Elisa, your story is amazing. The way you got up, it inspired a lot of people." And I smiled, because I realized that, in the end, it wasn't revenge that changed me. It was the act of finally seeing myself, of choosing myself, of stopping apologizing for existing. This year's Christmas is coming. My mother called me to see if I was going. Let's do something smaller, more intimate. I'll cook it myself. I thought for a moment. Maybe I will pass, yes, but only if I am welcomed as I am. No labels, no jokes, no invisible hierarchies. She was silent. Then she answered, "You're more than welcome, daughter. I think it took us too long to see who you really are." And who am I? I'm Elisa, the one they called failure, the one who kept quiet and then spoke, the one who fell and chose to get up alone, the one who, in the end, was not remembered for the pain, but for having served justice with the dessert spoon.